Hey guys, if you can think about how you found this podcast, maybe it's on Instagram or TikTok, maybe someone shared it with you. I don't run ads for the show or have sponsorships, so the only way this grows is through word of mouth. If this was valuable for you in any way, my only ask is if you could share this with someone who you think would help their investing journey or business. Thanks a lot, and let's get to the episode. Welcome back to STR Like the Best. I'm Michael Chang. I have a very special guest today. It is my wife and business partner, Elizabeth. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Hi guys, how are you?
It's just me. So folks that are watching this, I'm in the office. Liz is filming in our basement office. And we wanted to start this mini-series within the podcast. We got a lot of questions on how did you guys launch this business together? And we want to tell you the story behind that. So this will be a multi-part series. If you are couple. We started this as boyfriend and girlfriend back in 2016 when we really started doing the research. And now we're married. We have 2 kids, and we continue to grow and scale the business. So really just want to tell you the highs, the lows, how to work together, like how we've worked together, mistakes we've made. I'll stop talking and let Liz talk. But we're excited to do this with you. We hope, leave in the comments if you like this format.
Awesome. Yeah, very excited to be here. And for those who don't know me yet, I'll give a brief intro. I'm a full-time real estate investor, specifically in the short-term rental space. Also, Michael's business partner and wife. And prior to real estate, I worked in corporate sales for 9 years for various fashion brands. So very excited to start this series and share our stories with everyone.
And just to introduce myself too, I'm 40 years old. We both live in New York. Liz and I got married 7 years ago. We started dating like 10 years ago in 2014. We started really talking about building a business 2015, 16, right, Liz? And it's been quite a journey. And we were actually talking about before, how do we actually structure this to make it useful? And I think the topic that we'll touch on today is how do you convince your partner, spouse to start a new venture, right? Whether it's real estate or anything, start a new venture. I'll just kick it off. I wasn't that interested in real estate. I didn't really have any background in it when I was working in investment banking. I was very, very focused on my work. And it took a lot of convincing for me to actually quit my job and want to do this. Really, the credit goes to Liz for pushing this in the beginning, especially on the real estate side. So Liz, I guess you always loved real estate, right? Because you got even before we met, you got your real estate. You had your real estate life.
Yeah, so I always had the love for real estate. I just learned from my father. I knew. Okay. So yes, I always have the love for real estate. I really learned it from my father since young, see how he was able to build his wealth, retirement through owning real estate. So always knew that was a path I wanted to explore. But while working in W-2 in a corporate.
Well, what exactly? You always say corporate sales, W-2. What were you doing exactly?
Yeah, so I work for fashion brands doing international sales.
What fashion brands?
Kate Spade, Tiffany, and long time ago also Liz Claiborne. That was right. Almost 10 years ago. Yeah, so had learned a lot of lesson and actually apply a lot of sales technique to nowadays into the real estate world. So that has been a great experience. But I fundamentally knew working the 9 to 5 wasn't for me. I wanted the freedom to be able to have full control of my time. I think at that time that was my goal. I don't talk about it a lot. The fundamental why was the reason driving me is all my families are in Taiwan and I couldn't have enough time to visit them. Lucky if once a year, most of the times once every 3 years. So in the end, I was thinking this can be it. I'm trading my time for money, for the paycheck, but I lose my family. So this cannot be I can't go on like this for that long. Even I stay in the corporate, how many days can I really take off? You have 14 days. If you go back home, that's it. You can't have anything else. So I told myself I wanted something that give me the flexibility on time, and real estate seems to be the right thing to do. So I started immersing myself with Bigger Pocket podcast, met a lot of real estate investors through just cold calling or networking. So that was great. That's how I kickstart in the real estate journey and then try to convince Mike with multiple attempts.
We'll definitely hit on that. And had I listened to you earlier, maybe a lot closer to hitting our magic retirement number. But let's talk about your dad. He helped us start this, right? Because he had the vacant unit in one of the buildings that he owns And when we say buildings, like, there's two residential buildings that are like have 3 units. We're not real estate. Don't be like, oh, we're real estate Mongols or anything like that, moguls or anything like that. But like, how did you see? Like, how was that such a formative experience for you to see? And I think talk about a little bit about what you saw, how he was able to really leverage like a pretty basic job into creating like some pretty decent wealth for himself. Maybe just talk about that. I think most people think, oh man, like I have to, because like we both were immigrants, right? And you feel like, oh, I have to have all this money or have this huge corporate job or anything like that. But that's not, that wasn't the case. And I didn't actually know this until you told me like later on, like how your dad built his wealth. And I was like, oh wow, that's really cool and interesting actually. Why don't we talk about that? Why don't you talk
Yeah,
about that?
so my father built his wealth through really work. At first, he was a taxi driver. And so he knew by driving taxi, you're just making a couple hundred a day. So he's like, why don't I just save all my money and buy? At that time, it was very valuable to own them, and you can rent those license plate out in New York City.
So so for people that aren't familiar with New York City, so New York City before, actually still now, you had
Yeah.
to buy like a medallion plate in order to be able to drive a taxi. And this is before Uber. So those are actually really valuable. Those were actually like a real savings vehicle for immigrants to save because they would appreciate in value and they would use that to retire. Now after Uber, that caused big problems. But
Hmm.
sorry, that was a savings vehicle. So for folks that aren't from New York, don't know the taxi medallion thing we have here.
Yes. So he was able to, I think he used all the saving, bought 2 medallion license, and then was renting those out to other people. So very early on, I learned, oh, owning the fundamental assets is really what can provide you cash flow, longevity, and then build long-term wealth. So he started there, and eventually he saved enough and made enough money. He sold the medallion at the high, actually, which is a great timing for him. I think a combination, I wouldn't say luck, but just have the eye, and because he was in the industry so deeply, right? So he understands what's the market like, is it the top, is it the bottom? So he knows because he's driving on the street every single day himself. So he sold them early on and then used those money and profit to buy the first real estate he owned, the primary residence, which is a 3-family in New York City. And that he always told me, one lesson he always told me is use other people's rent payment to pay for your primary residence. So
House
he
hacking, right?
never, house hacking. So
House
he
hacking, yeah.
never paid a dime on his own rent. And that was pretty amazing. So he didn't have that kind of stress every single month. So I have to make the rent, I have to make the mortgage. I could just see him. He has the best lifestyle. He does what he wants. He has a really stable job. It's a W-2 job with a union. So very stable. He worked till he retired, basically.
So
But
can I
yeah,
pause? I just want to pause here for a moment. So that was like the fundamental lesson you learned from your dad, right? Was like house hacking, right? And rent is
yeah,
like 40% of your monthly expenditure. So if you don't have to
yes.
worry about the rent, right? It's a huge thing you have to worry about every month. So I think what you're saying is your dad taught you buy something, house hack, rent out to other spots, so you can like close to live for free, and you get the appreciation of that real estate.
Yeah.
I do want to move over to like how we use that to launch our business, but maybe just talk a little bit like, so your dad started as a taxi driver, bought the medallion, like saved everything, bought the medallions, flipped them into basically sold at the high to buying real estate. He had like 2 buildings, right? And he had two
Yeah,
like
he sold
residents.
that, bought the first primary residence and sold it again because it appreciated so much and 1031 into a bigger building where
Oh, I
it
didn't even
will
know that.
bring him even more cash flow and then a house hacking again. So
And
that's
then,
how it happened.
so how he owned two, but he owned two, right? Before he sold the other one.
Yeah, yeah.
He owned two. Yeah, so he owned two in Queens, New York. One, it was like helpful in our journey because we were able to use that to launch the Airbnb business, which will, which I definitely want to hit on. But it's pretty powerful, right? You learn this from your parents. Like I didn't. The thing is, I never learned this from my parents. We did buy our primary home, but we lived in it. And actually, I didn't realize this until we started doing it, but they house hack too. My parents have a very normal single family home in San Francisco. I still remember my dad. He borrowed money from my aunt, and it was like the high. It was 1987 actually, and it was like the high of the real estate bubble. He was really scared to lose the money, but he was like, I have 2 kids. We were living in the living room of my uncle actually. And it's not really a way to raise a family. So we moved here in '84. My dad worked like as a delivery driver. So he saved enough money, bought the house, so my brother and I could live there, and my mom and all of us. And then he basically finished the basement for his own use, and then eventually rented it out. And then that basically paid for the house, like basically covered the mortgage from like year 5 to year 30. It's like fully paid off now.
Yeah, it's
The house, it's a real way to build. It's a real way to build wealth.
Yeah, it's a real way to build wealth. And New York City now, the rent and housing value is just so expensive. House hacking might be really hard, but plenty of people are still doing it. You can still invest out of state for cash flow to cover your personal primary residence. There's so many other strategies. So I think a lot of people feel discouraged by living in a high expensive state and thinking they can't really invest in real estate because the housing price is crazy. But I don't think it's true. Nowadays, with all the technology information, there's so many other ways to invest in real estate. So really just want to tell everyone, don't get discouraged. Yeah.
Yeah, like our student Brendan, who's in our mentorship program since August, he does this whole strategy, right? He lives in a kind of fairly high cost area in Florida and then wants to buy and house hack. But instead, I think that's a new thing now, right? Instead of house hacking for long-term rental, so his plan is to buy a duplex, live in one, house hack the other as an Airbnb, just so that he can get that additional cash flow and learn the business. Like, I mean, they're different, and that's the nice thing about real estate. There's so many different ways to play this. Now, let's go back to the topic at hand, like how like you eventually talked me into this, right?
Yeah.
Thankfully.
It took probably years.
I think it took
3-4 years.
No, I think 2 or 4 years to buy. It took 2 years for arbitrage. It took a year and a half.
Yeah.
We talked about it. And remember, and there was a heated conversation. Remember that one like argument we had on the F train?
Yes, I remember.
So you really drove I was working. You did all the research. And then when we first decided, I actually don't remember this anymore. Like, how did we decide to do that first one?
Okay. I remember I really wanted to buy and own assets from the very beginning. I didn't believe in arbitrage myself in the beginning. I was like, oh, renting and re-rented? What is this? I've never heard of this. I don't think you can do this. So in the beginning, I was the one actually trying to push to buy. And I was like, I show you some numbers. I found short-term rental in the smoke. I was like, look at this number. It's ridiculous. And you're like, oh, these are scam. It can't be real. Those people are just trying to make money off you.
This is going to be episode 2, like probably one of the biggest financial mistakes I've ever made. So we'll save this for next one.
Yeah, we can save it for next one. But that was the very beginning. So I was like, okay, I can't convince you, but I could see how Airbnb can be powerful because the way it generates cash flow. So we, at the time when my dad had a vacancy, we had a light bulb moment. It's like, why don't we try with our family's own unit? It's vacant, and then see how it goes before we risk everything else. So the capital wasn't that much. It's really just the furniture. It was about like 10K max. At that time, probably was $8,000.
Yeah.
So that's how I convinced you to even try it. So we tried it, and then you're like, oh my God, what is this number? And that's how we start like, okay, we got to grow this business as fast as possible.
Well, let's touch on, and we'll definitely hit on the growth as we started December 27th, 2016.
Yeah.
And we'll talk through the journey. Actually, I think even for me and you, actually, I just want to talk about it. I think we should just memorialize this for ourselves, actually.
Yeah. It's actually fun to now looking back at all this.
Yeah.
From the very beginning.
It was crazy. So when we first got the unit, I don't remember us really underwrite. I don't think because there wasn't really the data tools out there to underwrite this. I think it was just more like talking to people around. I'm just trying to think of, so if someone's listening to this, like, how'd you get started? Okay, well, we got started because one, we had a kind of an easy way to getting a lease because it's family, and it was like winter time too, so it was gonna be slow renting it out. It was like, if it doesn't work, then all we're out is the furniture. We'll just re-rent it long term, and then this was a kind of fun experiment, and then we move on. And then the furniture, that was $8K. And then let's talk about the underwriting. Like, I want to talk about the underwriting and a little bit of the, like, how do we actually set it up, the design and everything. I don't remember us. There wasn't, I know there wasn't Airbnb or any other real tools out there. How did we underwrite it? Do you remember?
We didn't really, it's just on the spreadsheet. You try to build your model, your investment banker model, and then we just play with the numbers, and then just based on, there wasn't any tool at that time. We were just going on Airbnb.com and really just look at people around us. The enemy method, the famous enemy method by Avery and Luke. Yes.
They branded it. I don't think it was like, they didn't invent it. They just branded it out.
Yeah.
It's kind of
But
cool.
it's really cool. So we did that and then just, I think we can do this. And then I think at that time we were like, okay, the worst case, we lose the lease and then move on. We are not, it wasn't, we didn't invest like $100,000 to buy the property. It
Yeah.
was a lease, a 2,300 lease.
So now it jogs my memory a little bit. I remember the way I built the model. I remember was just like, all right, so our rent is this, our expenses is this. All right, if we want to make $1,000 a month, like what would we have to make? And I remember looking at it. It was like, all right, we can do dollars a month, and then rent it out 20 days. Then it's okay. That's $400 plus 4,000 plus the cleaning, so that's $5,000. Like, okay, can we do 200? And then we looked around. I think we can. We weren't sure, but it was like it was just worth it to try. And I think it was just like get you off my back a little bit too. It was like, all right, because you had done so much work on it too. It's like we got to try something. I think this is a lesson too, right? Like, you had to just try. Sometimes you never know. It's not guaranteed, but you have to just try. And I remember being like, one, you were really you kept pushing it too. Didn't want you to waste all the time and effort into looking at this. Persistence.
Being persistent helps.
But also making like a real case too, right? Like, hey, this actually can work. But I think you being flexible too, right? Being like, all right, if he's not ready to buy, I'd never bought anything before, right? Because it was like, even those houses in the Smoky then were like $400K. With $100K, I was like, I don't want to do this. $100,000. Like, I remember having this conversation with you. It was like, dude, we've never bought anything before. Now you want to buy a property in Tennessee that I don't know, have no idea where it is, never been there. Put $100K, put $500,000 down, and we're going to manage this remotely while I'm working full time in banking and you're working full time. That's nuts.
Yeah, I remember that conversation. It was pretty heated. I was like, you don't understand this number. Have you ever seen this before?
No, I know. And I was thinking, like, when you work and you don't have no idea.
You just don't have time. Yeah.
But it's don't have time, but also you don't have a perspective too, right?
Yeah.
Because for me, my perspective is like stocks. Oh, stocks go up 8%, right? Or whatever, right? And then when I see big numbers, I'm like, oh, this is a scam. And I think a little bit of just, it's like, you're protecting yourself too. I'm smart. Like, I know when these are scams.
Yeah.
And like, you're too proud to be open-minded. And that was for me a big thing. I was like too proud to be open-minded. I'm the one with the MBA and I'm the one with the investment banking and done billions of deals.
This number impossible. Doesn't exist.
This must be a scam because I don't understand it. So this is a scam. And that has served me so poorly until I changed that thinking. But like that, I think our journey of starting there, right? I think that you were like at least flexible and be like, all right, we won't do this, but let's at least think about arbitrage. And remember, I think like the idea of arbitrage is actually for your mom.
Yes. So to be fair, my parents, they are like the people we really need to think, big time.
Yeah, so Liz's mom, her friends, people doing rental arbitrage. We actually didn't know about this. We had done some research with like people talked about it, but we didn't really put it together until she had someone in her network show her what they were doing in Manhattan, and they were like, these numbers are ridiculous. And we're like, all right, if they can do it, we can do it. That's how we got started. And that's how I think ultimately I became convinced of it. And Liz, I guess you were just convinced of it from the beginning, right? This is just something that you wanted to do.
Yeah, I knew Airbnb is something I wanted to tap into, not more so real estate is something I know I want to get into. Airbnb, just like the timing and everything, it just came along the way, and then marry the real estate aspect pretty well. And then with some of the design element in there and coming from the fashion industry background, that really helps. So my vision was already there when the idea popped up. Okay, I'm willing to give it a try. If we can't buy, let's rent. Let's prove that it works. And then let's go sharpening our pencil operationally and on the analysis as well before we go buy something bigger, because in the end of the day, it's our own capital, right? It's expensive. It's our money. We got to be really smart on investing. So that's why I was like, okay, I'm committed. I'm willing to do this. So I remember you and I worked really hard for the first a year or two, really just on the weekend, setting up units, doing figuring out operation stuff all along. And at that time, there wasn't a lot of technology to help you like today. We were using manual keys. We were answering every questions on our own 24/7. We were calling
our phones. We were just using the Airbnb app. There was no PMS. There wasn't a lot of the tooling that there is now. And I think that's what I want to hit on. I think on the next episode, what should we talk about on the next? So the next episode, I think we'll talk about how we launched. And I think we should talk about how we launched. And then so for us, if you're listening, if you're interested, like definitely give us a comment, hit us up, let us know if you like this, any topics that you want us to cover. But I think we'll keep this one shorter for now. I want to just introduce this concept, this topic. And you'll just hear directly from me and Liz on how we launched a business. Ultimately, like the podcast really is to showcase to people that it is possible for everyday normal people to do this. We're very normal everyday people. We bring on guests that have done it as well. So you'll hear it directly from us. This 7-year journey together.
Yeah, and then it's very interesting for us to unfold this again, to think back how much growth and progress we have made. And I do think having as a husband and wife team working together in the beginning is very difficult. If you're seeing another, I always tell people, oh, how do you convince your spouse? I will say in the beginning, first 2 years, it's really hard. You have to work out all the different ways of thinking. You see a different side of your spouse from work versus at home. So how do you balance that? So I think that's something we want to hit on in the next couple episodes and really share how we overcome these challenges.
I know. Well, I'm really easy to work with.
Yeah, as a city investment banker who is skeptical about everything.
Yeah. What's I think is like there's a time and place for everything, right? And there's definitely a lot of stuff like when you're working that serves you really well when you're working in a W-2 job when you're working for someone else. But when you're working for yourself, you have to. There's a lot of those thinkings that have to change and have to pivot because when you work for yourself, like just one thing, like it's not about winning. It's not about you winning. It's about everyone winning. And what I mean by that was like in the beginning, when I looked at it, I have to win this negotiation. I need to win this thing. And if you never leave anything on the table for the other person, there's no relationship. They don't want to work with you anymore. And ultimately, running a business is like building a successful business is building relationships around you with your guests, with your landlords, with your vendors, with the people that you work with, with your business partner. So this is an example of one thing that I've learned. And yeah, I think this is partly great for us to do to memorialize this and a little bit cathartic too, at least for me. A lot of things that we've gone through. And my hope is that this, if you're listening, if you are someone in a professional services job, like I started this at 35. I'm 43 now at 35. So it wasn't like 21 when I started this. So it's not about what age you are, but it's just like the mindset. Are you ready to do this? I think that's a much more important thing that I want to just make sure that folks understand. I'll leave you the last word, Liz.
Yeah, and I think I would end with this. One of the coolest thing I think I have seen for ourselves is the personal growth for both of us in terms of building a business together and then how do we think about our family for the future. The business actually helped a lot as we started building our family, which I never thought of. So that's something, I guess, a pretty big unexpected benefit that I found. I really want to hit on that too for the next episode, but I do think building your own business is one of the coolest things, one of the hardest things too that you can do, but the reward is so worth it. And I will leave it at that, and then we will talk more about it next episode.
All right, folks. Liz, thanks for doing this. It took a little convincing, but I'm glad we were able to do this. And then folks, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we look forward to making more for you guys.
All right, thank you.
Bye.